Hey guys, this will be our first homework video for quite a long time, but I wanted to be able to help you out with the homework tonight. So we're going to take a look at Module 4, Lesson 5. It's called Classwork because originally we were going to use it in class to practice, and we're going to do a few of the problems throughout the front and the back side of the page to help you out with your homework. So in the first section, you have to match each inequality to the graph of its solution, and so not all of the equations have y by itself. So the way you want to approach this is really for each one you want to get y by itself, and then you can actually make a good representation of what the graph should look like. So I'm going to work on number 4 as an example, and to get y by itself I would want to subtract x from both sides, so that gives me y is greater than negative x plus 1. So I'm looking for a graph that has a starting point at plus 1. So really the only one that I see here is letter C. I'm looking for a dashed line, and I'm looking for a slope of negative 1 over 1. So down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1. So I've been able to successfully match my graph to letter C. Now let's take a look down in the bottom section. Here we're just asked to graph one line and do the shading. So we're going to do these just like the examples in class, and let's pick one that is slightly more challenging because y is not by itself. So let's look at number 10, and we're going to get y by itself by adding x to both sides. So that gives us y is greater than or equal to, and then I'm going to write it in mx plus b form. So I'm going to put the x first, plus 1. So I'm going to go to plus 1, and I'm going to go rise and run 1 over 1. And I'm going to do a solid line because I've got an equal to sign underneath my inequality symbol. So there's my solid line. So that's the graph of y equals x plus 1. For the shading, I need to predict that I'm going to shade above my line, and I'm going to pick a test point. So here I'm going to pick the test point negative 2, comma 2. I'm going to plug in the 2 where y is, and the negative 2 where x is. And after I do all my math, negative 2 plus 1 is negative 1. And then I see, is it true? Is 2 greater than or equal to negative 1? Yes. So therefore, the place where my test point is, that's the side I'm going to shade. So there's my final answer for number 10. And it looks like at the bottom in 11, 12, and 13, the graphs did not come through on the copy. So we are going to skip 11, 12, and 13. So see there, you got a benefit from watching the video. You got 3 problems you got to skip. Now as I am turning it over and I'm looking at the back side for lesson 6, these are your systems of inequalities. So here you're just kicking it up a notch, and you have to graph 2 lines and shade twice in order to solve the problem. So I'd like to do number 1 together because that is a system involving horizontal and vertical lines, and then you can go on and do number 2 on your own to practice that skill, and then we'll pick one of the other problems. So at first, when I want to graph x is greater than negative 1 on all the horizontal and vertical lines, I'm just going to remember if I have an x, that's going to be a vertical line at negative 1, and it's a greater than, so I'm just going to use a dashed line. To decide which side to shade, x is greater than negative 1. I'm picking a point over on this side, so I'm going to pick 0, 0 for my test point, plug in 0 for the x, and see if it's true. Is 0 greater than negative 1? Yes. So that means I'm shading to the right of my line. And remember, these are the problems you're going to want to have two different colors available for you. So I'm going to get my blue marker now. And for y is less than or equal to -3. First of all, a y equals problem is horizontal at -3. And this one's going to be filled in or solid line. And then I need to decide whether to shade above this line or below it. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in the origin again. I'm going to use 0, 0 for my test point. And I'm going to say 0 less than -3. Is 0 less than -3? No. So that means the side of this line that has the origin, my test point, is not the side that I shade. So the shading goes below the line. And my solution region is this region where the two colors overlap. So I'm going to put a star. That's my solution region. And then the last step that we did from our notes is we picked a test point inside of our solution region. So I'm going to pick the point 1, -4. And I'm going to plug it into both equations. So for my x, is 1 greater than -1? Yes. For my y, is -4 less than or equal to -3? Yes. So my test point works in both equations, therefore I know I have a correct answer. So that's an example with some horizontal and vertical lines. Let's do one with just regular lines with slopes. So I'm going to pick number 8 and do that one together. So let's graph the first one. And remember, we're going to do a solid line and we're going to go to +2 with a slope of -1. So I'm going to get a straight edge and draw a solid line. And for my shading, I'm going to pick a test point up above. So I'm going to pick the point 2, 2. And I'm going to plug in 2 for y and 2 for x. Work out the math. And is 2 greater than or equal to 0? Yes. So that tells me I'm going to shade above the line. Now for my other equation, I'm going to get my other colored marker. I'm going to go to -2. I'm going to rise 2 and run 1. And I'm going to do a dashed line this time because it's a less than sign. So there's no equal to, so that'll be a dashed line. And then I have my shading. So I think it's going to be below because it's less than. So let me pick a point over there below. I'm going to pick 1, -3. And I'm going to plug in -3 for x and 1 for, -3 for y and 1 for x. And when I work it out, 2 times 1 is 2 minus 2. Is -3 less than 0? Yes. So that means I'm shading on that side. Okay, so let me continue my shading here. And this part is, the just red is not part of the solution. My solution region is where the red and the blue overlap. So if I was doing a multiple choice test and I was designing a question, I would say which region has the solution? And here's my 4 possible regions, and region B would be where the solutions are because that's where the red and the blue overlap. And then one more type of problem that we didn't get an example on today, 10, 11, and 12 here. We've got to come up with the equations for these lines, and then that would be our system. So let's take a look at number 10. And I want to see what is the equation of this line. And I can see that my intercept is at 2 and my slope is rise 1, run 1. So here this line is y equals x plus 2. But then all of the shading is this shading is below it. So as an inequality, that would be y is less than or equal to x plus 2. And then as I find my other line, here my intercept, or b, is at -3. My slope is also +1 because they're parallel lines. They have the same slope. So y equals x minus 3. And then the shading is above it, so that's going to be y is greater than or equal to x minus 3. So here's my system that has this solution. Y is less than or equal to x plus 2. And y is greater than or equal to x minus 3. That's the system that would give me this graph. Thanks for listening.